In this week's video, I'm going to be teaching you a Feldenkrais inspired movement sequence that focuses once again upon the area of the neck and shoulders. Today's video is a movement sequence very much inspired by my Feldenkrais training. It focuses particularly on the area of the neck and shoulders, which for a lot of people is an area that can get very, for want of a better term, congested. What I suggest is that you watch the video through once, just to get an idea of the structure of the class, and then on a second time get down on the mat and do it with me. Please begin by lying down on your mat. And if it's comfortable for you, stretch out the legs. But if the weight of the legs begins to pull on the area of the lower back, then feel free to bend the knees to take the pressure off the back. Also, you might need some kind of support behind the back of the head. If you find when that you're lying down, your head is tilted back and your sort of chin pointing at the space behind you, then it's probably a good idea to take one or two pillows just to help you give you some length in the area of the neck. So begin with your arms just long by your side, have the legs a comfortable distance apart, and then please bring your attention to your right foot and just begin to do a few movements, just gently pointing and flexing the right foot. Now, as you point the foot, the toes you send away from yourself. As you flex the foot, you draw the toes towards you and you think of sending the heel away. So you get this lovely stretch in the back of the leg. So you're just gently pointing and flexing the foot, and you may begin to feel how this movement travels up through the leg into the area of the hip joint. You may even begin to feel a pull into the area of the pelvis and the back. And then pause with the right foot and then do the same with the left foot. So you're just gently pointing and flexing, feeling that lovely stretch in the back of the calf. And just ask yourself, is it a different range of motion with this foot? If you've had an injury, an ankle sprain, it might be much more sluggish on the one foot compared to the other. And again, you're not trying to correct anything at this stage, but just sort of ask yourself, note those questions, just notice if you can sense any difference. Now, just one thing to notice about this, as you flex the heel away from you, careful not to do it so much that your heel lifts off the floor. The reason for that is some people, and you may be one of those, tend to hyperextend the knees. So just by keeping the heel on the floor, you should be able to avoid that issue. So just gently pointing and flexing. And then pause, and then begin to make some circles with your big toes. You can imagine you've got a paintbrush on the big toes, and you're just making some circles in space. And although, of course, the instruction is given in terms of the toes, you can see I'm really letting my heels be part of the movement, so I'm not just wiggling the toes, trying to let the heels be part of that. And again, you may feel how the legs respond, the legs roll out, perhaps feel the movement in the hip joints. Once you've done a few circles in one direction, then reverse the direction of the circles. Just nice, easy breathing. Good. And now pause and then move in your imagination the paintbrushes onto the little toes. And then again begin to trace some circles in space, thinking of the paintbrush being on the little toe side of the foot. And once you've done a few of these circles in one direction, then reverse again the direction of the circle. So we're just, at this stage, just warming up the joints of the feet, the ligaments, the muscles, just through mobility exercises. And now pause And then position your feet so that you're on the centre of the back of the heel. So your toes are pointing straight up towards the ceiling. And then just see if you can curl the toes under as if you're picking up some tissue paper. And then really think of spreading the toes apart. Now, I'm just using my hands for visual demonstration purposes, but of course the hands really have nothing to do with it. So you're scrunching up the toes, and then think of spreading them apart, trying to create space between each of the individual toes, scrunching under and then spreading apart. And once you've done that a few times, pause and then see if you can curl the big toes under and extend the 4 smaller toes. And then you curl the 4 smaller toes under and extend the big toes. So you're curling under the big toes, trying to extend the 4 smaller toes. And don't worry if you can't do this, it's very challenging, but have a go. Curling the 4 smaller toes under, but extending the big toes. And you can see on one foot, my big toes in a state of anarchy. It's not really doing what I want it to do, but that's fine. Just trying to explore this movement. Now, stay on the centre of the back of the heel once you've done a few of those movements. I'm not counting out repetitions, I'm just looking for movement constantly. If you want to do more repetitions, please feel free to pause the recording. If you want to do less and rest, then that's absolutely fine. But stay on the centre of the back of the heels, and now see if you can just show the soles of the feet towards each other and then away from each other. Towards each other like 2 doors closing and then opening. Towards each other and then away from each other, towards each other and away from each other. Again, the nice thing about these movements, although the focus is on the feet and the ankles, actually there's quite a lot of very interesting movement going on in the hip joints. Good, now pause and then please bring your right leg to standing. And position the foot somewhere where you can feel the ground. You can press down into the foot to and feel that contact is solid. Now, once you've done that, begin to press down into the foot in such a way as to roll the weight of the pelvis to the left. So I'm just pressing down into the foot, trying to roll the weight of my pelvis to the left. Now, a number of things here just to pay attention to is one, the position of your standing foot. You see, if it's too close to the other leg, and a lot of people do this in class, then it becomes much harder to do the movement. So you want it a reasonable distance away from the lengthened leg, maybe a little bit further out to the right. And then as you begin to press through the foot, try to keep the knee looking towards the ceiling. So as I'm pressing through the foot, I'm thinking of keeping the knee looking towards the ceiling, as opposed to letting this happen. You see, if that happens, what tends to happen is you rely on your inner thigh muscles, whereas if the foot is standing and you keep the knee looking towards the ceiling, you can perhaps feel how it begins to recruit the outer hip muscles, the outer gluteals, and you get this lovely opening in the hip joint. So I'm just pressing through the foot and feeling as if my abdomen was kind of just full of sand. I'm just thinking of pouring that sand over onto the floor at the leg. I'm not trying to push from the lower back, I'm just trying to use the floor to roll the weight of the pelvis to the left. And then also see if you can just keep your right shoulder heavy. So I'm not trying to roll onto the side, I'm trying to think of this right shoulder being heavy into the floor. And then pause and then change the leg. So you bring your left leg to standing. Again, you can always try a few different places for the foot, but definitely don't have it too close to the other leg. maybe even a little bit further out to the side. You can try having it closer to the bottom, further away as your knee flexibility allows, and then begin to do a movement of just gently, so I press down into the foot, I wait for the movement to come into the knee, it flows down into the hip, and I'm thinking of just rolling the weight of the pelvis to my right, keeping the knee looking towards the ceiling. And then you begin to recruit these outer hip muscles, which are so necessary for being able to stand upright, gravity, for walking, all that kind of stuff. So you're pressing through the foot, just nice, easy breathing, trying to keep your shoulder, the left shoulder this time, heavy, so that we're beginning to differentiate the movement of the pelvis from the chest. So you see, if the shoulder lifts, there's no differentiation. If I can let this shoulder be heavy, you begin to get differentiation, as I said, from the pelvis, from the upper part of the chest. Now, pause. Please bring your right leg back to standing. Again, position the foot. Now we're going to add some arm movement. So first of all, see if you can just slide your left arm out to the side at shoulder height, not higher at this stage. Just if you can, as you slide the arm out, you let the palm, the arm turn towards the ceiling, and then please bring your left hand onto the chest, and then begin to do a movement of just reaching with your left hand over to the left, sorry, keeping the hand in contact with yourself. So you're not lifting it in the air, keep it in contact with yourself, and then you begin to reach with the hand towards the other hand, and then, so I can get this far, and then I think, oh, I need to press through my foot to help me reach the two hands together, and then maybe a little bit further. And then I come back, keeping the hand in contact with myself, letting myself roll onto the back. So again, you reach with this right hand, kind of caressing yourself, and as the hand begins to reach, you can feel how the ribs and the chest has to soften, so that the weight begins to transfer over to the left, into the left shoulder, and I reach with my right hand, and I think, maybe now I need to press through that foot to help me reach a little bit further, and then I come back slowly and with control. So again, I reach with the hand, notice I'm turning my head and eyes, but I'm not trying to lift my head, keeping the head down, and then I reach. Now I've got my fingertips together, and here I can think, maybe I can just slide the arm a little bit further, so my scapula, shoulder blade, just begins to glide on the rib cage, and then I come back slowly, rolling, transferring my weight back onto the back. And again, so I reach, 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 breathing just nice and easily. So my hands are touching, and now I think, actually I can just get a bit more movement in that shoulder blade, and then I come back slowly and again with control, so I'm not falling back. Such a lovely movement to do. You can do a lot more than I'm showing, but now this time same movement, but see if you can keep the head and eyes looking towards the ceiling and even over your right shoulder, as if I'm trying to see my right heel. I can't see it, that's for sure, but it's as if I'm trying to see it over my shoulder. Keeping the jaw nice and relaxed, the breathing nice and easy, and once more, so I reach, allow my chest to soften, so I'm rolling around my left shoulder, keeping my head towards the ceiling, and then I reach with the hand, the arm rather, a little bit further, and then come back. Now, I just want to add, I know there's a lot to think about in these movements. One other thing that you've heard me mention before in my videos. Now, it's very common to do this and stiffen through the hand and the forearm. So it's as if I'm trying to pull myself forward with my hand and arm muscles. So you want to try and think, as if you're holding a baby's hand. You want to try and keep the arms and the joints as soft as possible. So as I'm reaching, I'm not tensing, I'm keeping my hands soft, rolling, reaching, and then I come back. Now, once you've done a few, keeping the head looking towards the ceiling, then roll again, reach rather, allowing the head and eyes to look in the direction that you're reaching to, and then come back. So just turning the head and eyes, reaching, again jaw nice and soft, pressing through the foot as necessary, and then come back. Now I'll show you that on the other side. So if you bring the left leg to standing, have the right leg long, again just think about the position of the foot. Can you keep the knee as much as possible looking over the towards the ceiling? Bring your right arm out to the side, turning the palm towards the ceiling. The left hand is on the chest, keeping the hand nice and soft, and begin to reach across. So what happens is my ribs, can I let them soften? So I'm transferring weight into my right ribs, and as I go further now, letting the head and eyes roll, pressing through the foot as necessary, and then I think, maybe I can just glide the arm a little bit further, so I get this movement of the scapula on the ribs, and then I come back. And again, so I reach, roll, press through the foot as necessary, and then think, maybe I can just reach that a little bit further and come back. And once more, keeping the hands soft, the breath nice and free, I reach, and then I come back. Good. Now, next time, keep the head and eyes looking towards the ceiling, and the reason for that is just to differentiate the neck muscles from the shoulder blades and the chest. So I reach, keep my head and eyes looking towards the ceiling, try and reach a little bit further to glide the shoulder blade, and then I come back nice and slowly. So again, reaching, keeping the head and eyes looking towards the ceiling, jaw nice and soft, and then I come back. And then once you've done that a few times, then you can again look with the head and eyes in the direction that you're reaching, and then come back. Good. Now, pause, and then change the legs again. So you have your right leg standing and the left leg long. And we're just going to come back to the same movement, but this time, if you can, take your extended arm, the left arm, a little bit higher on the floor. So just a little bit to begin with. And then again, you begin to reach with the right hand, turning the head and eyes, pressing through the foot as necessary. Maybe then you can get a little bit more of a glide, and then you come back. And then you progressively add a little bit more height in this elevated lengthened arm. So I reach, turning my head and eyes, looking towards the arm that's reaching, and then come back. And then you can begin to take the arm, just again keeping it within a range of comfort, so not going into pain. You reach, turn, press through the foot, and come back. And then some of you will be able to take the arm so it's more or less in line with the shoulder on the side of the trunk. And you reach, turn, I'm keeping my head down, and I'm looking, and then come back. So again, I'll just show that on the other side. Again, be kind of your own guide as to what's comfortable. So never force any movement, any range of motion. You're just looking to keep it so that you can breathe easily, you can keep the jaw nice and soft, the hands free of tension. So the right arm comes out at shoulder height, the palm is turned towards the ceiling. Have the left hand on your chest, begin to reach, turning the head and eyes, pressing through the foot as necessary, and gliding the arm, and then come back. And then each time you can just carefully lengthen the arm that's on the floor a little bit higher, reaching, turning the head and eyes, and come back. And again, some of you be able to take the arm even higher as you're reaching and coming back. And some of you, again, but not into strain, be able to have it really in line with the shoulder and the side of the body. Good. Now pause, come back to centre, and just have a little rest for a moment. And then please, in resting, just roll the head and eyes a little bit to the right and to the left. Just nice and gently, right and left. Now, as you're rolling the head and eyes, just check again your jaw is soft. You're letting the eyes be part of the movement. And feel how the nose can trace a little arc in space towards one shoulder and then towards the other shoulder. And then come back to centre. Please bring your legs back to standing, both legs this time, and cross your right leg over the left. So a good cross of the thighs if possible. And then begin to do a movement of just tilting the knees to the right and then back to centre. So again, see if you can keep the movement small to begin with, just as you get used to it, and then come back. Because the legs are crossed, what happens is it begins to move the pelvis immediately. So as I'm tilting the knees to the right, I can feel how the left side of the pelvis is coming away from the mat. My left ribs are beginning to leave the mat, and more weight is coming down into the ribs on the right hand side and come back. Now, you can do a number of breath patterns with this. It doesn't really matter which one it is, as long as you're breathing. So you can breathe in to tilt the knees to the right and exhale to bring them back. Or you can breathe out as the knees tilt and inhale to bring them back. Again, it really doesn't matter. Personally, I like to breathe in as I tilt the legs to the side and exhale to come back. It's always good to change your habits. Now, as you're tilting the knees, it's important that you only tilt the knees as far as you can keep this opposite shoulder down, and then come back. So again, it's very tempting, particularly if you're a bit contracted in the pectoral area, to let the shoulder come away too. So see if you can just let this area, right shoulder, be heavy as you're tilting the knees to the right and then come back to centre. Now pause, and then imagine there's a cane, a little stick between your nose and your knees, that you're holding that stick there, and then as you begin to tilt the knees, allow the head and eyes to roll with the knees and then come back. So you're trying to have the knees and the nose leave the midline at the same time, and then you're coordinating the movement to come back at the same time. Again, just letting the shoulders be nice and heavy, and then come back. Now pause, and now the next time you can forget about the stick, but have the nose and the knees go in the opposite direction to each other. So again, I'm still trying to coordinate this so that the knees and the nose leave the midline at the same time and come back at the same time. So there's no hurry. It really isn't about how far the knees go. It's much more about, can you do this movement with control and coordination, and as free of any unnecessary effort or tension as you can. Good. Now pause and then change the cross of the leg. So your left leg is crossed over the right. And begin just with the knees first of all, because we've changed sides. Just tilt the knees a little bit to the left and come back to centre. So just breathing, for me it's breathing in to tilt the knees, exhaling, coming back, once more tilting in, tilting as I breathe in, and then exhaling to come back. Now I think of the stick between my nose and the knees, so the head and the eyes and the nose and the knees are leaving the midline together and coming back, and then coming back. Once you've done a few of those, going to the same side, keeping always that opposite shoulder heavy, then you can begin to mix up the pattern, so the knees go to the left, my head and eyes roll to the right, keeping the shoulder heavy, and come back. So just gently tilting, looking in the opposite direction, and then coming back. Now pause, uncross the legs. Again, if you need to rest for a moment, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I encourage you to do so, to see how that all feels in the area of the shoulders. And then once more, please bring your legs back to standing. Now, this time, please bring your left hand into the area of the lower back. Now, some people it's not so comfortable, so if you need to, you can always have the hand out, or even the hand resting on the tummy. But if you can, bring either the fingertips or the back of the hand into the area of the lower back. So my palm is down, again trying to keep the hand soft. So the weight of my back is on the back of that hand. Now, begin to do a movement of bringing your left shoulder away from the floor and then back towards the floor. So I'm just bringing the shoulder forward and then back to the floor. Now I'm not lifting the elbow. Again, if you're lifting the elbow, you're using arm muscles that you don't need to use. So see if you can keep the elbow down, and you're just thinking of the shoulder coming forward and back to the floor. Now, as you do this, can you notice your collarbone, this long thin bone, your clavicle, which attaches to the breastbone, it's sort of, the outer tip of it is coming forward in a little arc. Collarbone sort of rolls a little bit forward, and then as you go back, the collarbone, also the arc goes back towards the floor. And again, as you're doing this, keeping the breath nice and easy, can you notice what happens in the area of the ribs here? So if you can allow the ribs to soften, that will assist the movement of the shoulder coming forward. You can see my ribs here, I'm softening, and in fact more weight, the weight of the shoulder, as the shoulder comes away from the floor, I feel a transference of weight into the ground in this area, and then I come back. Again, I'm thinking of it coming forward and back. Now most people, if you're a bit contracted, will find the forward movement more accessible, but the returning back to the mat much more difficult. So if that's the case, really pay attention to the return to try and bring that shoulder back, forward and backwards. Now pause, and this time can you slide your shoulder down as if I'm sliding it down the mat towards my back pocket, and then I slide it up to my ear. So I'm sliding the shoulder down and then up towards my ear. Now again, if you're contracted in the pectoral area, what tends to happen is people do this to slide the shoulder. In other words, they're pronating it, bringing it forward. So really think, can you keep the shoulder back towards the mat as you're sliding it up to the ear and down towards the back pocket, up towards the ear, and down towards the back pocket. Good. And then once you've done this movement a few times, it begins to stretch out these neck muscles attached to the scapula. Then see if you can turn this movement into a circle with the outer tip of the collarbone. Just trying to make this movement, this circle, as smooth and as generous as possible. And once you've done a few circles in one direction, reverse the direction of the circle. So again, just trying to keep it nice and smooth. Now pause once you've done a few of those circles, and now this time once more cross your right leg over the left and go carefully, begin to tilt your knees to the right and then come back to centre. So you're tilting the knees to the right and then coming back to centre, but trying to keep this left shoulder heavy so it's not coming forward as the knees tilt to the side. So the distance from the shoulder to the knees is growing larger, and then we come back. Okay, find the breath that suits you. For me it's breathing in, and as I exhale, that's it, I bring the legs back to centre, just gently tilting the knees. Now you can move the head and eyes in the opposite direction to the knees, that's fine. Keeping the jaw nice and soft. You can also have the head and eyes going with the knees. All are possible variations. And once you've done this a few times, then pause with the knees just a little bit to the right. Now, often when I tell my students that, they just let the knees drop. So try not to do that. So again, just tilt the knees a little bit to the side, somewhere where you can hold the legs comfortably without straining in the jaw or the eyes. Keep them there, and then think of bringing the shoulder forward in the direction of the knees, and then release the shoulder back down. So I bring the shoulders towards the knees and I release them back down. Now you can see what happens with me is the knees and the shoulders are actually coming closer and then they're spreading apart. And that might be the case with you, so the shoulders coming forward and away. So I think each time I think of increasing the distance of the knees and the shoulder, forward and away. Good. Now pause, bring the legs carefully back to centre, and then begin to, and go carefully with this one because we've constrained the position of the arm. Begin to tilt the knees to the left and then to the right. To the left and to the right. Again, you can keep the head going with the knees in the same direction, or you can have the head and eyes going in the opposite direction to the knees. It's also a variation. Just tilting the knees gently from one side to the other. And what we're doing here, or one of the things that we're doing, is because we've constrained or fixed the position of the arm, we're beginning through the movement of the legs and the pelvis, is to just get the ribs moving on the scapula. So just getting them moving slightly on the scapula. Good. Now once you've done a few of those, again, you can do more or less. Uncross the legs. Carefully just roll a little bit to the side so you can take the arm out. And then let the legs go. And just notice how the two shoulders feel now. I can definitely feel this one's flatter than my right shoulder. I'm right-handed, so I tend to have more tension, usually habitual tension in the right-hand side. So I can feel how this has spread onto the mat. And then try rolling the head a little bit to the right, to the left. See if one side's different to the other, maybe a little bit easier. Certainly I can feel so much smoother to the left. So let's do that sequence on the other side. So you bend the knees, bring your right hand into the area of the lower back. But again, don't strain if you've got a shoulder issue. My right shoulder's a bit niggly this morning because of the work I was doing yesterday. So I'm just being very careful, not trying to over position the hand. And then first of all, just think of bringing the shoulder forward and then releasing it back to the floor. So shoulder forward, feel how the arc of the tip of the collarbone is coming forward, and then I think of releasing it back to the floor. Forward and back. Forward and back. Good. Once you've done a few of those, then I think of sliding the shoulder up to the ear, and then down towards the back pocket. So I think of the shoulder coming up to the ear, sliding it down along the mat as much as possible towards the back pocket, forward up towards the ears, down towards that back pocket. And I feel this lovely lengthening going on in these neck muscles on the side. Forward, up to the ear, down towards the back pocket. Now you can think of turning this movement as you did on the other side into a circle. And I can definitely feel this, on this side it's more tender for me than it was on the other side. So again, take it slowly, just trying to make the circle as smooth as possible, and then reverse the direction of the circle. Reverse the direction. Good. Once you've done a few of those circles, then cross your left leg over the right, comfortable cross. And I'm just beginning to tilt the knees a little bit to my left, and then I come back to centre. Can add the head going and eyes with the knees, and coming back. That's it, just nice, easy movement. Careful about not to hold the breath. And again, I'm thinking of this shoulder, right shoulder, staying down towards the floor. So I'm not trying, if I lift it, I go further, but I get no real differentiation. So I can keep that shoulder heavy. And then you can try looking in the opposite direction to the knees. And coming back. Okay, nice, easy breathing. And then once you've done that a few times, pause with the knees a little bit tilted to the left, my left, but going to somewhere where there's no strain and you can keep the shoulder heavy. And then once you've done that, begin to bring the shoulder forward, and then think of releasing it back towards the floor, the knees going a little bit further. So think of the shoulder and the knees coming together, and then I think of the distance getting a little bit further, shoulders and knee towards each other, and then away, once more towards each other and away. And then bring your legs back to centre, and then go carefully, again because of the position of the arm, I begin to tilt my legs a little bit to my right, and then to the left. To the right, keeping this right shoulder heavy, left shoulder heavy, one side to the other. Again, you can begin to try the different variations with the head and eyes. Either having them go in the opposite direction, you can have the nose and the knees going in the same direction. And then once you've done a few of those, then pause, uncross the legs, again just let your weight roll off the hand so you can carefully extract the arm. Bring the arms down by your side, let the legs go long, and again just notice how does that feel. So it certainly feels a bit flatter, it's still a bit tender for me, so that's a signal I need to go carefully. So just roll that head and eyes a little bit from one side and to the other. Now pause, and please bring your right leg to standing. Your right leg to standing. And actually, I'm sorry, I'll change that. Bring your left leg to standing. It'd be easier if I show you on this side of the camera. So with my left arm down by my side, I just want to think of just lengthening my arm down, and then I release. So I'm just gently sliding my arm down. So as if you've got, I don't know, a gin and tonic or a cup of tea there, and you just want to check it's still there. So I'm just sort of reaching down, and then I think of, as I release, think of sliding my shoulder up to my ear. So just lengthen down, and then release. So as you do this, notice how do you keep these ribs held. So if I keep the ribs held, I'm really not going to go very far with the arm because the ribs are stopping the movement. But if I can think of these ribs softening, that can help to reach the arm, lengthen the arm down, come back. And then begin to allow the head and eyes to roll, to look as if you're checking to see if your cup of tea or your gin and tonic is still there, and then come back. So I'm just sort of lengthening the arm down, reaching, and coming back. Lengthen the arm, looking, rolling the head and eyes, and come back. And then once you've done that, change the legs and arms. So again, I just want to think of, I'm just trying to lengthen my arm down, allowing the head and eyes to roll, to look, and then I come back. Just thinking of how these ribs on the side can soften to help me lengthen the arm down. And what you'll begin to notice, of course, is, so as I'm lengthening my right arm down, if I can think of the other shoulder sliding up, I can lengthen it a bit further, and then I'll come back. So again, lengthen the right arm, let the other shoulder slide, and then I come back. So we're beginning to evolve more of the chest in the movement, lengthening the arm, and come back. And then once you've done that a few times, bring both legs to standing, and see if you can lengthen first the left arm down, letting the other shoulder slide up, and then lengthen the other arm down, letting the, for me it's my left shoulder slide up. So notice how I'm letting the head and eyes roll, looking in the direction that I'm lengthening the arm. And then pause. So whereas before I was letting the head and eyes roll, this time just see if you can keep the head and eyes looking at the ceiling above you. And I'm not fixing the head, you know, clenching the jaw or anything. I'm just letting the weight of my head rest here. And then I do the same movement we've just did of lengthening one arm down, letting the other shoulder slide up, thinking how these ribs can soften, and vice versa. Just keeping my head and eyes looking towards the ceiling. And what this does is little yo-yo movement, begins just to get movement into the base of the neck, where that C7 vertebrae is at the base of the neck, which is an area where a lot of people get, from forward head postures, very congested, get fatty deposits. So you can see how, I'll just show you, keeping the head and eye centered, this movement here begins to bring movement into this area. Okay. So once you've done that, again, just pause, have a rest, notice how the head and shoulders are lying, and you can try just going rolling the head and eyes from left to right. Now, as you roll the head and eyes left to right, thinking of this arc, can you notice if you have the idea, so when we were reaching, how the ribs here underneath the armpits softened. But there, it's almost, I just breathe out. These ribs soften. As you roll the head and eyes, letting the ribs soften, if you can include the idea that this is all part, this softening of the chest is part of the rolling of the head, you will find, I'm sure, the quality of the movement. Please bring your legs to standing, and then bring one leg into the chest and then the other. So I've got hold of my the area around my knees or the head of the shin, and what I'm trying to do is bring my legs in close towards me. So the reason for that is I want my lower back to be down towards the floor. The more my knees go away from me, can you see how, in fact, I'm arching the back? So try and bring the legs in close towards you, and allow the lower legs just to dangle. Don't hold the feet up, because that just recruits the front of the shin and the thigh muscles. So just allow the feet to be soft, the legs to dangle. Have one hand on either knee, and then have the knees, you have the thought of you're drawing them to your two armpits to keep the lower back down. And you'll notice my elbows are down, but if they're off the floor, that's absolutely fine. And then begin to do a movement of just tilting your right knee a little bit to the right, and then come back to centre. So I'm just tilting the knee a little bit to the right, and then coming back to centre. Now, my left knee, I'm pretty much just letting it stay where it is. It moves a little bit, but first of all, I'm just exploring how I can take the right knee to the right and back to centre. And I can feel as I take the knee to the right, what happens, of course, is my pelvis is rolling to the right and come back. Now, once you've done that, see if you can allow the head and eyes to roll to the right too, and then come back. So I'm just allowing my head and eyes almost to lead the movement, so I'm rolling towards my right hand side and coming back. I'm going to the right and then coming back, and then eventually, as you get used to this movement, you may be able to come all the way to lie on the right hand side. Now, once you're on the right hand side, see if you can lift the left leg away from the right and then bring it back. Now, as I'm lifting the leg, I'm thinking of this left knee not just going towards the ceiling, but coming towards my left shoulder, my left armpit. So it's going in a little arc. So I'm thinking of the knee coming back and then back onto the side. And you'll notice that I'm keeping this my right leg lingering. So as I'm just bringing this left leg away from the right, I'm just exploring how far can I bring it away from the right before I feel the moment when the right leg wants to lift, and then I come away from that. So just by doing that, you're just helping to free up the hip muscles, the adductors on the right leg. And then once you've explored that a few times, just nice easy breathing, I'm thinking of this knee coming towards the armpit, there'll come a moment where if you wanted to go further, then that right leg has to come too. So I think of going to the right with my right leg, allowing the head and eyes to be part of this, let the knee come down, and then I think of bringing this left knee towards the left armpit to roll all the way back onto my back, and then I think of going over to the left, and then my right leg joining the left. So once you're on the side, again you might need some more support under the head. Think of the right leg coming away from the left, and I'm just kind of exploring how far can I bring the leg before my left leg wants to get involved, and then I come back. So just exploring this movement first of all, keeping my hands as soft, my elbows soft, the jaw soft, to come back all the way onto the back. So it's great exercise, this rolling. I've got another video about this which goes into more detail, but it's a great way, provided you keep the legs in close, of helping to just ease off any tension in the back. And once you've done it a few times, you can go more quickly from side to side, but without any hurry. And then once you've done that a few times, please come to lie on your left hand side. So I'm starting on my left hand side because that's closest to the camera, and you may find that you'll now need some support, extra support under the neck. The important thing is not to really let the head hang and there'd be a lot of strain in the neck muscles. So you want to support the head sufficiently that there's no strain. And then once you're lying on the side, have your left arm or the underneath arm stretched out in front of you, and then have your right arm just resting on your side. My knees are pretty much bent up at a 90-degree angle, as if I'm sitting on the side. Now this top arm, it can either be long, or I prefer it to have my hand just resting on my tummy. And the first thing you want to do in this position is think of the right shoulder, just letting it move backwards. And then you come back onto the side. So I just think of as if I'm pouring the weight of the shoulder. So I draw the shoulder back down towards my spine, and then I come back. So I'm just letting the weight of the shoulder drop backwards and then come back. Now, as you do this movement, think of your right side of your pelvis. You're drawing that back with the shoulder. And you're trying to do this so they go at an equal rate, so that the pelvis and the shoulder moving back, and then they come back. You'll notice, of course, as I'm thinking of pulling this side back, my knee will also slide back as I'm taking the shoulder back, and then come back. So you see, if I keep the pelvis still, and that's perfectly fine to do, and take the shoulder back, I'm going into quite a big twist because my knee's not going back so much, going into a twist. And at this stage, that's not what I'm after. I'm really just thinking of as the shoulder going back, the pelvis going back. So I'm just really taking the weight off my underneath hip joint and my underneath shoulder, and then come back. Now, once you've done this, allow the head and eyes to turn towards the ceiling, and then come back. So keeping the jaw nice and soft, the head resting, I turn the head and eyes as I take the shoulder and the pelvis back, and then come back. Now, notice as you do this, as you take the shoulder and the head back, if you look at my head, does this happen? Do you shorten in the back of the neck? And if that is the case, and it's very common, think of maybe just keeping the chin slightly drawn in, so you keep the length in the back of the neck as you take the pelvis and the shoulder back and come back. So pelvis, shoulder, weight of the shoulder just dropping back, keeping the chin in, and then come back. Now pause, and now the next time you take the shoulder and the pelvis back, don't turn the head, stay looking at your left hand and see if you can simply slide the head back in space. And then you come back with the pelvis, the shoulder and the head. So I'm not turning the head, I'm staying, my nose and my eyes are looking at my left hand, and I'm sliding my head back on the mat as I take the shoulder and the pelvis back, and then I come back. So you'll really need, if you're not used to this, to slow it down, because some people will keep the eyes on the hand and in fact turn the head and eyes. So you want to try and keep your face, the head, the eyes, the nose, the chin, everything looking at this left hand, which is soft, as you take the shoulder and the pelvis back, sliding the head back. And as you get used to this, you'll feel it's a very different use of the neck. Careful again that you're not doing this. Chin moving away from the breastbone and shortening in the back of the neck. So if that is happening, again, think chin slightly drawn in as you take the shoulder, pelvis and head back, and then come back. And then once you've got used to that movement, see if you can combine it, so that the two head movements. So as the pelvis goes back, the shoulder goes back, you slide and then turn the head to look towards the ceiling, and then come back. So you pelvis, shoulder, head slides, and then you turn to go back. You see how my chest is much more open towards the ceiling, and then come back. So I shoulder, pelvis, head sliding and turning, and then come back. Okay. Now pause, and then please bring your right hand to rest on the left, and then begin to do a movement of this time just drawing your shoulder back towards the spine. So you can see I'm keeping the arms straight, I'm not bending the arm, not tensing through the hands. I think of the shoulder, the weight of the shoulder dropping back, my pelvis I've drawn back a little bit, and then I think of, once I've connected the shoulder, the scapula back into the spine, I think of taking the arm towards the ceiling, and then I come back. So again, take this slowly, you slide the shoulder back, and then you think of taking the arm towards the ceiling, turning the head and eyes and pelvis coming back, and then I come back. See, I'm not, just to try and clarify one thing, I'm not doing this, lifting the arm first and then trying to go back. I'm drawing the shoulder back, and then the lifting of the arm is actually coming from my core by the turn of the chest and the pelvis, and then I come back, keeping the hand nice and soft. So shoulder, arm back, and then to lift, again, pelvis, shoulder, chest, turning, and then I'm coming back. Now pause, and then bring your right palm onto your forehead, there. So I'm looking at the crook of my elbow, and I glue my hand here. And now I think of turning my head and arm, elbow towards the ceiling, and then I come back. So I'm not doing this, I'm not lifting the elbow first and then doing the movement. I'm keeping the relationship of my nose and mouth to my elbow constant as I take the elbow towards the ceiling, maybe a little bit further, and I come back. So what you'll notice if you think about the movement of the shoulder blade, it's making a little arc in space around my spine. It's coming forward towards the ground in front of me, and then as I go further, the shoulder is going down to the floor behind me, and then I come back. So my shoulder is going around my spine in a little half circle, forward and backwards. Now, once you've done that a few times, bring the right hand back onto the other hand, and then think of, again, drawing your shoulder back, so it's almost as you can think of it plugging it into the spine, and then you think of taking the arm to the ceiling, but again, notice it's my chest, that's it, and I'm thinking the kind of the movement is coming from that shoulder, it's going around the spine towards the floor behind me. And now once I'm here, I can think of the arm opening towards the floor behind me. And then I can think of the arm lifting slightly, so the weight of it comes back into my shoulder. And once it's there, I think shoulder coming around towards the to bring me back onto my side. So again, I think shoulder, arm back. Now I think shoulder going around, chest turns, my hand is comfortably within my vision, my shoulder going back towards the floor behind me, and then I can think of lengthening the arm towards the floor. I think of bringing the arm up, I wait for the weight to come into my shoulder, and then I think of coming back. You see, a lot of people with shoulder issues, what happens is, first of all, they'll lift the arm kind of through stiffening the hand, and that can cause strain in the joint here, and then they'll get the arm up and they kind of get stuck here, and so to take the arm further, I don't even want to do it, it's because of my right shoulder, they let the arm drop, and what happens is the head of the humerus, the upper arm bone, is kind of pushed up, putting strain in the shoulder joint, and you can see I can try and get my hand down, but if I'm not turning my chest, if I'm not using my centre, that's a very quick way of hurting myself. A lot of people do that. So again, think shoulder, arm back. Now to take the arm, I turn. Use the movement in your spine and the chest till my shoulder goes down towards the floor. Take the arms wide. And now here, once you've achieved your comfortable maximum, see how open I am in the chest. You can just roll the head and eyes to look towards one hand and then towards the other hand. That's it. Each time I look towards my back hand, I can feel this lovely opening again in the pectoral area. Now to come back, I think again, slowly lifting the arm. I wait for the weight to come into my shoulder. And now I think chest, that's it, to transfer the weight into my underneath side to bring the hands back together. I'll just show that sequence on the other side. But I'll turn just so you can see. And so have the left arm just resting on your side. We won't need to do as many repetitions on this side because it's amazing how you'll have learned from what we've done on the other side. But begin to take your left shoulder and the left side of the pelvis back and then come back. So the shoulder and the pelvis, I'm letting the weight of the shoulder, I'm sort of sliding it back towards the spine as I let the pelvis go back, and then I come back. So shoulder, pelvis, and then come back. And then you can begin to turn the head and eyes to look towards the ceiling, just being careful you're not shortening in the back of the neck, and then I come back. So shoulder, pelvis, and then I come back. Now, once you've done a few, letting the head turn, keep the head and eyes focused on the hand that's in front of you. So for me it's my right hand. And this time as I take the shoulder and the pelvis back, I think of sliding my head back, keeping my head and eyes looking at the hand, and then I come back. So shoulder, pelvis, and my head slides back. Come back again. As you're doing this, take as much time, really slow it down to make sure you're keeping the head and eyes looking at the extended hand. Come back. Once you've sort of mastered that, keeping the neck long, then combine the two movements. So as the shoulder and the pelvis go back, you slide the head back and turn it at the same time. And then you come back. So shoulder, pelvis, slide and turn, and then come back. Now once you've done a few of those movements, bring your left hand onto the right, and then think of just sliding the arm back towards you. So again, not through bending the arm, just sliding the hand back. And now think of the turning, the shoulder, pelvis, head turning just towards the ceiling to begin with, and then come back. So again, I think of sliding the arm back, turn the chest, pelvis rolls back, looking towards the ceiling, and then come back. So again, just to remind you, I'm not lifting the arm first, because that would bring the weight here and push down into the shoulder. So I want to think first, I shoulder back and allow my chest and pelvis to turn, to take the arm towards the ceiling, and then I come back. Now pause, and then bring your left palm onto your forehead, and then again keep the elbow in the same position directly in front of your nose and your mouth, and think of turning the chest, turn the elbow and the head towards the ceiling. And you'll notice I'm letting this knee slide back, and then I come back. So again, I'm turning, thinking of how my shoulder is going down towards the floor behind me, and then it's coming towards the floor in front of me. I'm rolling off my right shoulder, my right hip joint, and coming back. Just be careful as you slide the knee back, you're not lifting it. It's not that there's anything wrong with that movement, it's just not what we're trying to do today. That's it. Good. And then come back. Now, once you've done a few of those, bring the left hand on top of the right. Again, think of sliding the arm back first, keeping the hands soft. Turn the chest, let the knees slide back to turn towards the ceiling. Feel how that shoulder can come down towards the floor. Actually, my pillow's a little bit too high. And then once you feel the shoulder down, then you can think of extending the arm back towards the floor. And then to come back, I think of just beginning to lift the hand. I can feel the weight transfer into the shoulder, and then I think of chest and ribs, bringing you back towards the ceiling, and then back towards the other hand. So again, think arm back, turn, think of that trajectory of the shoulder blade towards the floor behind you. I take the arm further, and then I think of slowly lifting the arm, feel the weight into the shoulder, and then I come back, and then back to the starting position. Okay. Once you've done that explored that on the left side, then please come to lie on your back again. Please come to lie on your back again, and just notice how your shoulders feel, how the chest feels. Do you feel a little bit more freedom in that area? And then begin to just slowly roll the head and eyes a little bit from right to left, just feeling again how the ribs can be part of that movement. And then once you finish, slowly bring the legs to standing, roll carefully to the side, come up to sit, and then to stand. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I hope your shoulders feel great. If you have had a go at the lesson, please let me know how you got on in the comments section below. And if you like the lesson, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button.